Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. The day Amelia first introduced me to her mother was filled with excitement and nervousness. As we approached her house, I gently squeezed her hand, silently reassuring her that everything would go smoothly. Her mother greeted us with a warm smile at the door, but her gaze was more penetrating than I had expected, assessing me from head to toe. When we entered, we settled in a cozy living room where we were served coffee. I tried to charm her with stories about my life and my dreams for the future. Amelia beamed with pride as her mother laughed at my jokes and nodded approvingly at my plans. But as the conversation continued, a strange tension began to fill the air. I noticed her mother lingering on me with her eyes for too long, and her questions became increasingly personal, crossing boundaries I wasn't prepared for. She started asking probing questions about my past relationships and experience with women, all the while leaning in closer, never breaking eye contact. I tried to steer the conversation towards safer topics, but it seemed that Amelia's mother was intent on keeping me in the spotlight. At one point, she placed her hand on my knee and squeezed it slightly, complimenting my appearance. I looked at Amelia, expecting some sort of intervention, but she seemed blissfully unaware, immersed in the joy of this family moment. When it was time to leave, her mother hugged me too tightly, her hands lingering as they slowly slid down my back. I quickly pulled away, feeling both uneasy and confused. On the way home, a sense of anxiety gnawed at me, though I wanted to believe that she was simply being overly friendly. I wrestled with the thought that perhaps I was overreacting, but her actions told a different story. I knew I would have to discuss this with Amelia, but for the moment, I focused on the fact that I seemed to have earned her mother's approval. I hoped that would be enough to build a solid foundation for our future together. Looking into Amelia's eyes, I felt a deep certainty. She was the one I wanted to spend my life with. Her unwavering love, support, and loyalty had become my anchor. Determined to make our future official, I meticulously planned my proposal. Every detail had to be perfect, so that Amelia would remember this moment forever. One starry night, I took her to a secluded park where we had shared our first kiss. The soft glow of candles surrounded us, creating a romantic atmosphere. My heart raced as I knelt on one knee, took her hand, and looked into her eyes. "Amelia," I began, my voice trembling with emotion, "from the moment I met you, I knew my life would never be the same. You brought joy, laughter, and love into my world, and I can't imagine a single day without you. Will you marry me and make me the happiest man alive?" Tears of happiness streamed down her cheeks as she quietly whispered, "Yes." I slipped the ring onto her finger, sealing our promise. Our wedding was beautiful and intimate, surrounded by our closest loved ones. As Amelia walked down the aisle, radiant in her white dress, my heart swelled with pride and love. We exchanged vows, promising to stand by each other no matter what challenges life might bring. As we settled into married life, Amelia continued working at the bar. I trusted her, but at times my protective instincts stirred unease in me. The thought of her working in a place filled with alcohol and unpredictable patrons made me uncomfortable, even though I knew she loved her job. Respecting her independence, I supported her, constantly reminding myself that our bond was strong enough to withstand any external influences. I was her rock, always ready to offer a comforting embrace after a long shift. One evening, as usual, Amelia left for work and I stayed home, expecting a quiet night. I had no idea that this night would shatter everything I believed in. Late into the night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. What I saw made my blood run cold. On the screen were grainy but unmistakably clear photos of Amelia, my wife, caught in a passionate embrace with a man I didn't recognize. The photos were time-stamped, and they had been taken just a few hours earlier, at the time when she was supposed to be at work. My world collapsed as I stared in disbelief at these images. My mind raced, my heart pounded, and questions swirled in my head. How could she do this to me? To us? Had our entire marriage been a facade? I stared at the evidence before me, unable to deny what was plainly presented right in front of my eyes. It was undeniable, devastating. The message that accompanied it was no less shocking. The sender, claiming to be one of Amelia's colleagues, was blackmailing me. He demanded an outrageous amount of money to keep quiet about Amelia's affair. If I refused, he threatened to tell everyone, our friends, family, and even her boss. I sat frozen, my mind reeling from the betrayal and extortion I now faced. In just a few moments, my world had been turned upside down. I was paralyzed, unsure of what step to take next. Part of me wanted to confront Amelia immediately, demand an explanation, force her to look me in the eyes and admit the truth. But another part of me, more rational and restrained, understood the need for caution. I couldn't let my emotions take over. I needed more proof to make sure this wasn't some cruel joke or elaborate lie, and I had to figure out how to handle the blackmail without destroying our lives and reputations. Standing there, clutching the phone with the incriminating photos, I felt conflicting emotions battling within me. Anger, betrayal, pain, all of it flooded my thoughts at once. Amelia, the woman I trusted more than anyone in the world, had thrown everything we built away. I took a deep breath, trying to regain my composure, when suddenly I heard the sound of the front door opening. Amelia walked in, looking tired, and there was something anxious in her expression. She glanced at me, and for a moment, guilt flickered in her eyes. "Luke, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. I raised the phone with the photos in my trembling hand, barely able to contain my anger. "You know exactly what's wrong, Amelia," I growled, trying to keep my voice steady. "How could you do this to me? To us?" Her eyes dropped to the photos, and the color drained from her face. She took a small step back, her lips parting in shock. "Luke, I can explain." "Explain?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "Explain how you betrayed me? How you destroyed everything we had for some meaningless fling?" Tears started streaming down her face, but I was too consumed by the weight of her betrayal to feel anything but rage. "It was a mistake, Luke," she pleaded. "It meant nothing. I love you, only you." I recoiled from her touch, the word love now feeling like a cruel joke. "Love?" I spat. "You don't even know what that word means. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You wouldn't have lied, made me into a fool." Her sobbing grew louder, but to me it became just background noise. Everything we had, everything we planned. Now it felt like a cruel joke. "I can't, Amelia," I said, my voice trembling. "I can't even look at you without thinking about what you did, without feeling this pain." "Please, Luke," she begged, her voice full of desperation. "Don't say that. We can fix this. I'll do anything to make things right." But deep down, I already knew this couldn't be fixed. The trust between us was shattered, beyond repair. I felt something inside me growing cold, the love I once had for her turning into something distant and frozen. "I need time, Amelia," I said quietly. "Time to process all of this. I can't be around you right now. I don't know if I ever can." Her face twisted in pain, but I was too numb to care. I turned away from her, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. I needed space, air, something, anything to clear my head. As I stepped into the night, I felt the cold apathy settling over me. The anger and heartache were still there, but they felt muted, buried under a layer of ice. As I left the home we once shared, I realized that our relationship would never be the same. The damage was too great, too irreparable. And as I drove through the darkness, my mind was a storm of emotions swirling under the weight of betrayal. I couldn't shake one thought. Would I ever be able to trust anyone again? I headed to the only place where I could find a little bit of comfort, Amelia's mother's house. When I arrived, she met me at the door, her face filled with concern. "Luke, what happened? You look terrible," she said, inviting me in without hesitation. I sank heavily onto her couch, and the weight of everything I had been carrying hit me like a tidal wave. "It's Amelia," I barely managed to whisper. She cheated on me." Amelia's mother sat down beside me, placing a hand on my shoulder as if to comfort me. "Oh, Luke, I'm so sorry," she said with compassion in her voice. I just can't believe she could do that." Finally, the tears broke free, and as I cried, she embraced me. Her arms were warm and soothing, like a lifeline in the chaos of my mind. I clung to her, grateful for her support when I had nowhere else to turn. As the weeks passed, I started spending more and more time at her house. She became the only light in the darkness surrounding me. We talked for hours, reminisced, laughed, and gradually a faint glimmer of hope began to emerge in my life. One evening, we were sitting together on her porch, sharing a bottle of wine as the sun set. Something shifted between us. Our eyes met, and before I knew what was happening, we began to kiss, our lips meeting with an unexpected passion. We pulled back, confused by what had just occurred. "Luke, we can't do this," she whispered, but I saw the internal struggle in her eyes. "I know," I replied, my voice full of emotion, "but I can't stop feeling what I feel. You were there for me when no one else was, and I think I'm falling in love with you." She hesitated then, as if surrendering to the inevitable, kissed me again and held me close. We gave in to the attraction that had been building between us, and our bond deepened in secret. Weeks turned into months, and though we tried to keep our relationship hidden, Amelia began to suspect something. She noticed the lingering glances, the private conversations, the way her mother and I instinctively gravitated toward each other when we were in the same room. One day, as I was leaving her mother's house, Amelia confronted me. "What's going on between you two?" she demanded, her voice filled with anger and betrayal. I felt a bitter satisfaction looking into the face of the woman who had destroyed me. "What's the matter, Amelia?" I asked coldly. "Don't like the taste of your own medicine?" She flinched as if I had struck her. "How could you, Luke? With my own mother?" I laughed, loud and bitter. "You're the last person who has the right to talk about betrayal, Amelia. You destroyed us. Now you'll have to live with the consequences." I left her standing there, shocked and broken, but a strange sense of emptiness overtook me. I had sought revenge, and I found it. But at what cost? I had become what I despised, a betrayer, a liar. As I drove into the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had lost a part of myself. The man I used to be seemed unreachable, and I wondered if I'd ever find him again. I knew I had to think clearly now. Emotions couldn't cloud my judgment, not when everything was on the line. I had to be strategic, precise, and most importantly, protect myself. I contacted one of the best divorce lawyers in town, and we met in his office to discuss my situation. I told him everything, about Amelia's affair, how I uncovered it, and my relationship with her mother. He listened without judgment, his face a mask of professionalism. "Luke," he said, leaning forward, "given everything you've told me, we have a strong case. Amelia's infidelity gives us leverage, and if we handle this right, we can ensure a favorable outcome for you." I felt a wave of relief. That's exactly what I want. Amelia deserves nothing from me, not after what she's done. Over the next few weeks, we carefully planned my exit. I gathered all the evidence I could, screenshots of her messages, emails, receipts for gifts she bought for her lover. I opened a separate bank account and slowly transferred funds into it, careful not to raise any suspicion. Finally, the day came. I walked into our house with the divorce papers in hand, my heart calm. Amelia was in the kitchen, and when she saw me, her face turned pale. "Luke, what's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. I threw the papers onto the kitchen table with a sharp slap. "It's over, Amelia. I want a divorce." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't be serious, Luke. Let's at least talk about this." I let out a cold, harsh laugh. "Talk? You lost that right the moment you betrayed me with another man. I'm not going to beg for scraps of attention from a wife who couldn't stay loyal. I deserve better. I'm worth more." Amelia's eyes began to fill with tears, but I felt nothing. These were the consequences of her own actions, and now she had to face them. "You have until the end of the day to pack your things and leave," I said, my voice calm and unwavering. "If you stay here any longer, I'll call the police to have you removed, and don't think about taking anything that doesn't belong to you." I turned to walk away, leaving my words behind me. "A lawyer will contact you about the division of property." I left her standing there, shattered in the ruins she had created. A strange sense of pride washed over me. I was taking my life back, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not her or anyone else, steal my control from me again. I heard the front door quietly open and close, followed by faint footsteps heading toward the bedroom. A smile spread across my face. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment of final revenge on the woman who had caused me so much pain. The bedroom door swung open, and she stood there, her eyes filled with shock and hurt. "Luke, what are you doing?" Her voice cracked with emotion, but I didn't stop, didn't even look in her direction. I kept going, completely ignoring her despair, feeding off the desperation that clouded her face. "What do you think I'm doing, Amelia?" I asked coldly, with a mocking tone. "I'm giving your mother a night she'll never forget." Amelia's mother, with me, was entirely caught up in the moment. "Luke," she gasped, "don't stop! Please don't stop!" Amelia froze in the doorway, her face streaked with tears. "How could you do this to me?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rhythmic sounds in the room. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "How could I do this to you? That's funny, considering you destroyed our marriage for a meaningless fling at a bar. You made me this way, Amelia. This is all on you." I saw the realization hit her. Her actions had consequences. She had pushed me to this breaking point. "Luke, please," she begged, her voice weak and fragile. "I never wanted to hurt you." But it was too late. Too late for regrets, too late for forgiveness. The wound was too deep, the betrayal too complete. This was my moment of triumph, and nothing she could say or do would take that away from me. I stood up and looked her in the eyes, my gaze cold and unforgiving. "Get out," I whispered, my words dripping with venom. "Get out of my house and never come back." Amelia ran, her sobs echoing through the hallways as she fled. I watched her disappear, a wave of satisfaction washing over me. I had won. I had taken back my life, and nothing, not even her broken state, could take that from me. Later that night, I walked into a bar with my head held high. The room buzzed with whispers and stares. News of our divorce had spread quickly. But I didn't care. Let them gossip. Let them judge. I was free, and now no one could touch me. I went through the fire and came out of it stronger than ever. As I settled on a stool at the bar, I ordered a drink, doing my best to ignore the stares and whispers around me. The patrons were clearly curious, eager to discuss the collapse of my 3-year marriage. Some even dared to approach, offering empty condolences or fishing for juicy details. But I cut them off mid-sentence, making it clear that I wasn't interested in their pity or their intrusive questions. Taking a slow sip from my glass, I couldn't help but get lost in the memories of what I had endured. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the all-consuming rage, it was all so overwhelming at first, but I refused to let it destroy me. Instead, I channeled my energy into healing, focusing on rebuilding my life and reclaiming my sense of self. Step by step, I began to move forward. The journey was far from smooth. There were days when the weight of it all nearly crushed me, when all I wanted was to hide away and let the world forget I existed. But I forced myself to keep going, to push through the darkness. Over time, I grew stronger, more resilient. And now, sitting among people who thought they knew my story, I felt an immense sense of pride in what I had achieved. I had survived the worst chapter of my life and emerged better, more confident in myself. No judgment or opinion from anyone could dictate my future. This was my path, and I was steering it on my own terms. Finishing my drink, I stood up, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The road to recovery had been long, but I was determined to walk it with unshakable confidence. No matter what anyone thought or said, I knew my strength. I knew my resilience. I left the bar with my head held high, more resolute than ever. The divorce was final and I was free, free from the lies, the betrayal, and the pain that had clouded my life for too long. As I walked down the street, I couldn't help but think of Amelia, of how she had begged me for forgiveness. She cried, pleaded, made promises that she would change, swore she would never hurt me again. But I'd heard it all before, and now her words meant nothing to me. I had given her everything, my love, my trust, my unwavering devotion. And in return, she had thrown it all away for a fleeting fling with some guy she barely knew. It was unforgivable. The pain she caused left scars, but I refused to let her actions define my life. I was someone who knew his worth, strong, independent, and fully capable of finding happiness without anyone's approval or recognition. As I kept walking, I thought about all the men who might have forgiven her, the ones who would justify her actions, forgive, and allow themselves to be taken for granted again. But that wasn't me. I respected myself too much for that. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Starting over never is. There would be obstacles and unexpected difficulties, but I was ready for them. I had already faced the worst life had thrown at me and come out the other side stronger than I ever imagined. So, taking a deep breath and stepping forward with confidence, I moved into the unknown. The future was mine, and I was determined to make it bright. No matter what challenges awaited, I knew one thing for certain. I had the inner strength to overcome them all. Because that's who I am, a fighter, a survivor, a man who knows his own worth. As for Amelia, she and her mother had become enemies. Amelia, after cheating on me, blamed her mother for the terrible betrayal, while her mother, who I occasionally enjoy spending time with, considered her daughter weak. But that no longer concerned me. I was moving on. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. I began noticing changes weeks, if not months, before this, but at first I brushed them off as insignificant. They seemed trivial, just a few extra messages and late meetings. Of course, everyone has busy periods, right? But this wasn't just about being busy. When someone looks you in the eye and makes up a story about a work event on the weekend, it signals a deeper problem, not after 19 years of marriage. Knowing all of Grace's quirks and habits, I started picking up on her subtle signs. She would get absorbed in her phone when she thought I wasn't paying attention. The screen would go dark the moment I turned toward her. She had a repertoire of pre-made excuses to step outside during dinner, always with that bright smile and too sweet tone she had perfected, acting as though I didn't see through her game. I understood, but I stayed silent. Typically, I observe from a distance when faced with problems I plan to address later. Grace was fortunate that I was preoccupied with a work project, one that required more physical effort than mental focus. 3 days spent on calculations and adjustments gave her some freedom, or so she thought. That's when I found the final piece of evidence. One evening after dinner, we were in the living room when she stood up to pour herself a glass of wine. Her phone buzzed on the couch beside me, and the screen lit up. The message read, "I already miss you." The sender was unknown, but the meaning was clear. Instead of confronting her right away, I kept quiet. In the past, I might have reacted with anger or punched a wall to release the pent-up frustration. But I had learned to control my emotions. That's exactly what I did, laying the groundwork for something far more satisfying than a petty argument. The first step involved surveillance, executed with such skill that my former engineering professors would have been impressed. I installed several small, low-grade cameras throughout the bedroom, carefully disguising them. These budget devices were inexpensive but functional, streaming footage directly to my laptop. I needed to make sure nothing raised her suspicions. Grace remained carefree, too absorbed in her fantasy to notice the wires I had hidden behind the bed frame over the past few days. I also crafted a special device with a spring mechanism designed to be placed under the mattress. Building this device was a labor of love. I set it to activate with a delay, allowing enough time for the bed to be in use. And then, boom, the ceiling met its rival. It wasn't just about causing harm. I knew it might result in broken bones, but for me, it was more about the betrayal, the shock of it all. I wanted them to believe they had a private sanctuary, only for me to turn it into their worst nightmare. I wanted them to fear me. I needed her to understand the consequences of destroying the life we had so carefully built together, but I'm getting ahead of myself. In the following days, Grace became predictable. No significant changes occurred. She continued with her usual indifference, weaving her lies, confident I would believe the story about a colleague named Madison who constantly invited her for evening drinks. "I won't be late," she said one evening, kissing me on the cheek as I nodded, placing the key on the kitchen counter. Her perfume lingered longer than usual, expensive. Curiously, it was a scent she hadn't worn for me in quite some time. "Of course," I replied, carefully hiding my thoughts, keeping a stone-faced expression as cold as the coffee machine beside us. As soon as she left, I went back to tightening the screws on my little device. Every turn of the key felt like a final adjustment, tightening the noose on her naive little story. The next phase had begun, the ruse. I arranged a trip, claiming that the company needed my presence in California for a week to present a new prototype. I remained calm, pretending to be annoyed about the trip. At dinner, when I informed Grace, she didn't press for details, just nodded, sipping her wine. "Oh? Another work obligation?" she asked, looking away as if uninterested. Her feigned concern almost made me laugh. "Yes," I sighed, skillfully dragging out this charade. "Shouldn't take more than 4 days, maybe 5 depending on how quickly we wrap things up. I'll keep you posted." She smiled, a smile that reminded me of the old days, back when she thought she was in control. I had the sudden urge to snap the fork in my hand. By the time we reached the airport, there was a noticeable lightness in her step. She waved from the driver's seat, radiating warmth and tenderness. But as she drove off, I noticed my hidden camera by the door had started recording, capturing her irritating left turn towards Charles's house. Conveniently, I was still nearby. I parked by the curb and killed the engine, my eyes fixed on the phone lying on the passenger seat. The live feed flickered for a moment before stabilizing, revealing the home I had painstakingly built with her. From this angle, I could see our bedroom, where Grace was meticulously preparing the stage for her little act. She thought she had everything under control, using the usual excuses about work perks, late meetings, and constant stress, as if I couldn't tell that something was wrong, as if I didn't know her routine better than she did. But tonight, she believed I was out of town. That was the most humiliating part. There was a twisted satisfaction in knowing how easily she had deceived me, and how naive she was about what was to come. Suddenly, the front door swung open, and there stood Charles, the charming realtor himself. With a smug grin on his face, he acted as if he truly belonged there, as if he had a right to be in my home and my bed. A cold, calculated satisfaction washed over me. Let him enjoy these last moments of confidence. They ascended the stairs, her laughter resembling that of a schoolgirl eavesdropping in the boys' locker room. Disgusting. I enlarged the video to full screen, my finger hovering over the remote beside me. Not yet. Timing is everything. I had put too much effort into this moment to rush it. They started undressing, laughing between whispered words I didn't want to hear. It was always the same pattern. Fleeting pleasures, temporary thrills. They were completely unaware. Grace approached the bed as if it were a ritual, as if it were a routine for them. Perhaps it was. She even had the audacity to toss one of the pillows onto the floor, the one I had chosen for her last year because she liked the design. That infuriated me. They both climbed into the bed, entwined and undressed. That bed. My bed. I clenched my jaw and gripped the remote tighter. Just a few more seconds. Grace let out a soft moan. Charles whispered something in her ear, which made her laugh again. Another shallow, empty laugh. I imagined how they thought the night would unfold. They'd enjoy their fun, sleep off the guilt, and I would return in a few days, none the wiser. I almost smiled. My finger pressed down hard on the button. The bed suddenly jerked upwards, flinging both of them into the air like a toy with a spring mechanism. There was no time for a scream. Their bodies collided with the ceiling, and the sound reverberated throughout the room. A sickening, wet thud echoed as flesh hit plaster. If either of them had been able to grasp the madness of what was happening, it would have been too late. Grace was the first to hit the ceiling. Her body twisted unnaturally, her shoulder striking the ceiling at an awkward angle, fully dislocating it. A faint crack resonated in my ears through the phone. She dropped to the floor like a rag doll, landing face first. She screamed, but it came out as a choking gasp as she clutched her shoulder, her entire body trembling with pain. Charles fared little better. The force of his lift slammed the back of his head directly into the light fixture, shattering it. A sharp crack filled the room as his chest collided with the edge of the bed. He collapsed next to Grace, gasping for breath, barely able to move. I swung the car door open and stepped out into the cool night air. My walk toward the front door was slow and deliberate. There was no need to hurry anymore. Rushing had been part of the thrill. I pushed the front door open as if it were just an ordinary evening. The sounds of their cries and groans floated down from upstairs, muffled by the closed bedroom door. As I approached the staircase, I deliberately kicked off my shoes, one by one. I ascended the stairs with calm determination, the sobbing growing louder with each step. A wave of peace washed over me. All those nights spent enduring her ridiculous excuses were finally at an end. The lies were over. I turned the doorknob, finding it unlocked, not that it mattered, and swung the door open with such force that the handle slammed into the wall. Grace's eyes met mine, blood staining her teeth. She whimpered my name, fear etched on her face as she tried to crawl away. No, I had no desire to talk. Charles, that fool, groaned, barely able to move, lost in his own pain. One hand clutched his broken ribs tightly, his body trembling as he struggled to breathe, each breath shallow and ragged. I stepped into the room, towering over the wreckage of their affair, feeling a deep satisfaction. Grace tried to crawl backward with her one good arm, her broken body sliding across the floor. Her arm hung limply from the dislocated shoulder. "Please," she gasped. I pulled out my phone and opened the hidden recording. There it was, undeniable. Every moment captured, every betrayal preserved forever. I held the phone out so she could see the video, relishing the silence. Grace's eyes widened in horror as she realized what was on the screen. She understood what it meant, what I was offering. She shook her head, tears mixed with blood streaming down her cheeks. "No, no, no, please, Brian." Her voice broke into pitiful sobs. Her career, her reputation, everything she had built was on the verge of destruction, shattered in mere moments. Charles, still too dazed and injured to fully comprehend, glanced at me. Even through his pain, I saw the realization dawning on his face. His jaw dropped in silent terror as he stared at the phone. There were no words, only a faint groan of despair. I let the silence stretch out, watching as the weight of the moment crushed them both. Grace opened her mouth again, perhaps to beg or scream. I felt complete indifference as I slid the phone into my pocket, not even glancing at her. I headed straight to the closet, where in one corner lay her collection of designer handbags, neatly stacked next to her shoes. All those luxurious things she had accumulated over the years. One by one, I pulled them out, throwing them onto the floor in a chaotic pile. "Brian, please don't do this," Grace stammered, her hands trembling as she tried to lift herself from the floor, barely managing to rise a few inches. I didn't turn to face her. Instead, I took out a lighter and flicked it. A small flame flickered softly, casting a warm glow on the mess in the room. My satisfaction was cold and calculated. This was only the beginning of their suffering. "You know," I said, my voice steady and almost disturbingly calm, "I've had quite a busy day. While you were otherwise occupied, I made some important financial decisions." Grace's eyes widened in shock as the realization hit her, and a dreadful understanding appeared on her face. "That's right, dear. Our joint accounts? Emptied? The house? It's now in my name alone. Your car? Sold. Everything we built together? All mine?" I watched as Grace's face turned pale, tears streaming down her cheeks. She tried to respond but could only stifle sobs. Charles lay motionless, his eyes darting between us as he finally grasped the seriousness of the situation. "You have nothing left, Grace. No money, no house, no support. And you," I said, turning to Charles, "are in just as much trouble. I wonder how your clients would react to a video of you in bed with a married woman." Charles's face drained of color. "You can't do that!" he squeaked, clutching his side as if in pain. "Oh, I absolutely can and will," I replied with cold certainty. "Unless, of course, you both prefer to face something even worse. In that case, I suggest you disappear." "You're lucky I'm even calling an ambulance," I said, pulling out my phone, dialing 911 as I kept my gaze fixed on them. "Yes, I need an ambulance. There's been an accident." After the call ended, I looked at Grace one last time. The woman I once loved now lay crushed, pathetic on the floor. All I felt for her was contempt. "Goodbye, Grace. I hope it was worth it." I left the house, letting them deal with the consequences of their choices. As I got into the car, I heard the rising wail of sirens, but I was already looking ahead, ready to start a new life, free from betrayal. Filing for divorce was a mechanical process, simple and devoid of emotion. I approached it like any business matter, with precision, efficiency, and absolute resolve. Grace didn't even try to resist. What could she say? Her body was battered, her spirit broken. When I saw her in court, I barely recognized the woman standing before me. The once confident gleam in her eyes was gone. I didn't feel a shred of compassion. She was just an empty shell, and honestly, that was more than she deserved. It was almost absurdly easy. She didn't contest a single point. The affair, documented in detail on that dating site, sealed the outcome before the battle even began. The divorce was finalized so quickly that I signed the papers as carelessly as canceling a gym membership. As for Grace, she left with only what she had on. I drained all the accounts, leaving her with nothing. No car, no house. And speaking of the house, I sold it too. Too many memories tied to a life that turned out to be a lie. Now I had a new place downtown, my own space to start fresh. A modest apartment located above a cafe. It's the kind of place where anonymity reigns, where people respect each other's personal space and avoid interfering in each other's lives. Everything here is functional. I found solace in this cold detachment. Waking up in a place unburdened by the weight of past memories was liberating. No longer did I wander through places that were filled with traces of her scent. Finally, I felt free. And you know what? I started dating again. I met women who weren't interested in my past, women who were blissfully unaware of Grace. They didn't need to know about it. I cut all ties with anyone connected to her, friends, acquaintances, anyone who might try to pull me back into the swamp of reconciliation or forgiveness. I was done with it. That chapter of my life wasn't just closed, it was erased. A barren wasteland. For the first time I existed without her presence looming over me. And the best part? That video. A small, sharp reminder of the pain, something I could hold on to, ready to surface at my will. Not to watch it again, of course. I didn't need to see it another time. I had seen it enough. It had served its purpose. No, just the knowledge of its existence was enough. I realized that Grace knew I still had it. It's amazing how one recorded moment can define a person's entire life. She would never feel safe again, always fearing that the video might surface, perhaps at her workplace or during an important interview. A few months later, I sent her a small reminder. Nothing too elaborate, just a snapshot of me at a bar, smiling like someone in control. I had my arm around a woman named Elisa. We had met a few weeks ago, but she wasn't the focus. The message was brief and clear. 2 sentences. "You'll never escape this," I wrote. In the envelope was the photograph along with that note. I imagined Grace in her filthy motel room, opening the envelope, looking at the picture, probably trembling, wondering if today would be the day I destroyed her life with a single click. She brought this upon herself, didn't she? Now she could lie in the chaos she created, with her broken ribs and shattered spirit. And so I took the final step in my revenge, the video. I sent it out to various social groups. Why keep such an exclusive video to myself? This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.